Under the scorching Arabian sun, beyond the towering minarets of Mecca, stands a structure that has defied time itself. Draped in black silk embroidered with gold, it is neither a palace nor a fortress, yet it commands the devotion of millions. The Kaaba is more than just a building. It is a symbol of faith, a site of unparalleled spiritual significance, and a place where history and mystery intertwine. It is the direction toward which 1 billion souls turn in prayer, and the center of a pilgrimage that has drawn seekers of faith for over 1,000 years. But beneath its solemn beauty lies a history filled with secrets, resilience, and divine intervention. The Kaaba has been built, destroyed, and rebuilt. It has survived floods, fires, and invasions. It has been the epicenter of miracles and the target of those who sought to bring it down. Its origins stretch beyond recorded history, tied to prophets, celestial relics, and a sacred lineage that connects the past to the present. Legends whisper that it was first built by angels before time itself, while Islamic tradition holds that it was reconstructed by Prophet Ibrahim and his son Ismail. What makes this ancient cube so powerful? What mysteries lie within its walls, and what stories have been carved into its very foundation? From the black stone, believed to have descended from paradise, to the divine moment when the world's direction of prayer shifted forever, the history of the Kaaba is anything but ordinary. This is more than just a structure. It is a place where heaven feels closer, where history breathes, and where faith takes physical form. Step closer and uncover the secrets of Islam's most revered sanctuary, the sacred structure that has withstood the test of time, carrying the prayers, hopes, and faith of millions across generations. Long before the rise of empires and the spread of civilizations, the Kaaba stood as a silent witness to the passage of time, a structure whose origins are as mysterious as they are sacred. Islamic tradition holds that the Kaaba was first built by the Prophet Ibrahim and his son Ismail, who were chosen by God to raise its foundations as a house of worship for the one true God. Guided by divine instruction, father and son labored beneath the scorching Arabian sun, lifting stone upon stone, their hands shaping what would become the most sacred site in Islam. With every block they placed, they whispered prayers, dedicating their work to the Creator, and when the last stone was set, a command echoed through the heavens, declaring this to be a house of prayer for all of mankind. Yet whispers of its origins stretch even further into the depths of history. Some accounts suggest that the Kaaba was not built by human hands at all, but was instead a celestial house that had existed in the heavens long before the world took shape. It is said that this heavenly Kaaba was mirrored on earth as a sanctuary for the righteous, and that angels had once constructed its first earthly form before time itself began. According to another belief, the structure had already existed in some form long before Ibrahim, its presence deeply rooted in antiquity, its sanctity untouched by the changing tides of human civilization. Over the centuries, the Kaaba remained standing, a lone and sacred edifice in the vast desert. It became a focal point for travelers, a sanctuary for those seeking divine connection, and a place where tribes from across the land would gather. But as time passed and faith was distorted, the purity of its purpose began to fade. Before the advent of Islam, the Kaaba had become a center of trade and tribal worship, housing hundreds of idols placed there by the polytheistic clans of Arabia. It stood as a paradox, at once a sacred site and a symbol of corruption, a place of immense spiritual power that had been overtaken by worldly interests. Despite these changes, the Kaaba's true purpose had not been forgotten. Even in the age of idol worship, its sanctity was undeniable, and many believed that it still held the echoes of its original mission. When Prophet Muhammad emerged centuries later to restore monotheism, the Kaaba would once again be returned to its rightful place, fulfilling the purpose for which it was always destined: to be the eternal house of worship for those who submit to the one God. Before the rise of Islam, the Kaaba stood at the heart of Mecca, not as a place of pure monotheism, but as a shrine filled with idols and symbols of polytheistic worship. Over time, the sacred structure that had once been dedicated to the worship of the one true God became a focal point for tribal deities, each clan placing its own representation of the divine within its walls. More than 360 idols were housed inside and around the Kaaba, transforming it into a center of paganism rather than a sanctuary of unity. Among these idols were the most revered deities of pre-Islamic Arabia, including Hubal, Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, each associated with different tribes and aspects of life. Mecca's status as a religious hub brought immense wealth and power to the Quraysh tribe, who controlled the city and the Kaaba. Pilgrims from across the Arabian Peninsula traveled to Mecca to pay homage to their gods, offering sacrifices and seeking blessings. The annual pilgrimage became not only a spiritual event, but also an economic enterprise. The Quraysh capitalized on this, turning Mecca into a thriving center of trade and commerce. The sacred nature of the Kaaba was overshadowed by material gain, and the original message of devotion and submission to the Creator was nearly lost beneath layers of superstition and ritualistic traditions. Despite this corruption, a lingering sense of the Kaaba's true sanctity remained. Some Arabs still recognize the presence of a higher singular deity, referring to him as Allah, though they believed in intercessors through their idols. Even in an era dominated by idolatry, there were those who longed for a return to the pure worship of the one God. This longing would find its answer with the arrival of Prophet Muhammad, who would restore the Kaaba to its rightful place as the central house of monotheism. When Prophet Muhammad and his followers returned to Mecca in 630 CE, the city stood on the verge of transformation. Years of conflict between the Muslims and the Quraysh had culminated in this moment, a moment not of conquest but of purification. As the Prophet entered the city with an army of 10,000, there was no battle, no bloodshed. Mecca surrendered peacefully, and with that, the Kaaba, the holiest site in Islam, was about to be restored to its original purpose. The Prophet proceeded to the sacred mosque, his eyes fixed on the structure that had once been a house of pure worship, but had become a den of idolatry. Inside and around the Kaaba, statues and idols stood as remnants of centuries of polytheistic practices. With a staff in his hand, Muhammad approached the Kaaba and one by one began to strike the idols, reciting the verse from the Quran: "Truth has come and falsehood has vanished. Indeed, falsehood is bound to vanish." The stone deities fell shattering into pieces as the final remnants of paganism were wiped away. The black stone, long revered and believed to have come from heaven, remained, but now as a symbol of monotheism rather than an object of superstition. Once the idols were removed, the Prophet entered the Kaaba. He ordered the erasure of paintings and inscriptions depicting polytheistic beliefs, ensuring that the house of God was cleansed of any traces of past distortions. Only an image of Prophet Ibrahim was left intact, as he was the father of monotheism and the one who had originally built the Kaaba alongside his son Ismail. After performing prayers inside the now purified sanctuary, the Prophet stood at its doorway and addressed the people of Mecca, declaring that all were equal before God, that there was no superiority of one person over another except through piety. This event marked a turning point not just for the Kaaba, but for Islam itself. No longer was Mecca a center of tribal worship or commercialized religion. The city was now firmly established as the heart of monotheism, and the Kaaba had been restored as the focal point of Muslim prayer. From that day forward, the Kaaba would remain free of idolatry, standing as a universal symbol of devotion, unity, and submission to the one God. With its cleansing, the final message of Islam was solidified, ensuring that the Kaaba would forever be the center of worship for Muslims around the world. The Kaaba stands as a striking yet simple structure, its cubical form wrapped in flowing black silk embroidered with gold. Though its design may appear unassuming, every element carries deep significance, reflecting centuries of reverence and tradition. Built from the sturdy granite of the Arabian Peninsula, its walls rise approximately 50 feet high, with a base measuring around 35 feet wide. The structure maintains a near-perfect cube shape, yet its profound importance transcends its physical form, serving as the spiritual axis for millions of worshippers worldwide. At the eastern corner of the Kaaba lies the Black Stone, a relic shrouded in mystery and devotion. Encased in a silver frame, this sacred stone is believed to have descended from paradise, placed by Prophet Ibrahim and his son Ismail during their construction of the Kaaba. Pilgrims who visit the site reach out to touch or kiss it, a symbolic act that connects them to centuries of faith and tradition. Some say it was once pure white, but darkened over time as it absorbed the sins of those who sought forgiveness. Above the Black Stone, the Kaaba's single entrance stands elevated from the ground. This golden door, known as Bab al-Tawbah, or the Door of Repentance, is rarely opened and leads into an interior that few have seen. Within, the walls are adorned with calligraphy and simple yet elegant decorations, while the floor is made of white marble. The roof is supported by wooden pillars, remnants of past reconstructions, each bearing silent witness to the building's history. A staircase within leads to the rooftop, though only a select few are permitted entry during special ceremonies. On the Kaaba's northern side, a semicircular wall known as the Hijr Ismail, or the Hatim, encloses a small open space. Tradition holds that this area was once part of the original foundation laid by Ibrahim, but was left out during later reconstructions. It is considered one of the holiest spaces within the sanctuary, and many pilgrims pause here in prayer, believing it to be a place of divine blessing. Atop the Kaaba, a golden spout known as the Mirzab channels rainwater from the roof, an architectural feature both functional and symbolic. Surrounding the structure, the sacred mosque expands outward, hosting millions of worshippers who circle it in a perpetual motion of devotion. Though the Kaaba itself is unadorned beyond its annual kiswa, its presence commands awe, serving as a timeless reminder that faith does not require grandeur, only devotion. In the earliest days of Islam, when the Muslim community gathered in prayer, their direction of worship was not toward the Kaaba, but toward Jerusalem. This alignment connected them to the traditions of earlier prophets, reinforcing Islam's spiritual link with Judaism and Christianity. For over a decade, the first Muslims, including Prophet Muhammad himself, turned toward the sacred city of Jerusalem as they prostrated in devotion. However, a moment would come that would forever alter the orientation of Islamic prayer and redefine its sacred geography. In the city of Medina, during the second year after the Prophet's migration, a revelation descended upon him in the midst of prayer. As he led his followers, the divine command arrived, instructing him to turn away from Jerusalem and instead face the Kaaba in Mecca. Without hesitation, Muhammad pivoted, and his companions immediately followed, adjusting their stance mid-prayer. This event, now known as the changing of the Qibla, marked a profound shift in Islamic identity, establishing Mecca as the undisputed center of Muslim worship. The change was not merely geographical, but deeply symbolic. It solidified Islam's distinct place among the Abrahamic faiths, while reinforcing the Kaaba's role as the spiritual heart of monotheism. The site that Prophet Ibrahim had built as a house of worship for the one true God was now restored as the focal point of Muslim prayer. This transition also tested the faith of the believers, distinguishing those who accepted divine guidance from those who doubted. From that moment onward, no matter where a Muslim stands, whether in the deserts of Arabia or the cities of the modern world, prayer is directed toward the Kaaba. The shift in Qibla was more than a change in direction. It was a turning point in history, one that unified the Muslim Ummah under a single sacred focal point. The Kaaba has stood for centuries as the spiritual heart of Islam, but its history has been anything but peaceful. Throughout the ages, it has faced destruction, war, and reconstruction, each event leaving its mark while reinforcing its resilience. From natural disasters to military sieges, the structure has been rebuilt multiple times, yet it has always remained a symbol of unwavering faith. One of the earliest threats to the Kaaba came decades before the birth of Prophet Muhammad. In the year 570 CE, the Abyssinian ruler Abraha marched toward Mecca with a massive army, intending to destroy the Kaaba and shift religious power to his own kingdom in Yemen. His army was led by war elephants, an overwhelming force never before seen in Arabia. As they approached the city, a divine intervention occurred. The sky darkened and flocks of birds carrying small stones rained down upon Abraha's forces, decimating his army before they could reach the sacred structure. This event, recorded in the Quran in Surah Al-Fil, became a testament to the Kaaba's divine protection. Decades later, during the early years of Islam, the Quraysh tribe undertook a reconstruction of the Kaaba after severe floods weakened its foundation. This was the same occasion when Prophet Muhammad, before receiving revelation, played a key role in settling a dispute between Meccan leaders over who would place the revered black stone in its position. His wisdom in resolving the conflict demonstrated his growing influence even before his prophethood. One of the most devastating attacks on the Kaaba occurred in 683 CE during a siege by the Umayyad army. As rival factions fought for control over Mecca, catapult fire struck the sacred sanctuary, causing the Kaaba's walls to collapse and its black covering to burn. It was later rebuilt by the Umayyads, restoring its previous form. However, the most shocking desecration came in 930 CE, when the Qarmatians, a radical sect, stormed Mecca and looted the Kaaba. They stole the black stone and carried it away to their stronghold in Bahrain, keeping it in captivity for over 2 decades before it was finally returned. Despite these calamities, the Kaaba has endured. Each time it has fallen, it has risen again, stronger and more revered than before. Rebuilt and restored by various rulers, from early caliphs to the Ottoman sultans and later the Saudi kingdom, the Kaaba remains unshaken in its purpose. No matter how many times history has tested its strength, it continues to stand as the eternal house of worship, drawing millions of believers in devotion and faith. Every year, millions of Muslims from across the world embark on a journey unlike any other, a pilgrimage that unites them in faith and devotion. Hajj, one of the 5 pillars of Islam, is not merely a physical journey to Mecca, but a spiritual experience that traces the footsteps of prophets, embodying sacrifice, humility, and absolute submission to God. Pilgrims leave behind their worldly identities, dressing in simple white garments known as ihram, symbolizing purity and equality before the Creator. Kings and commoners, the wealthy and the poor, all stand side by side, erasing divisions of status, race, and nationality in an unparalleled display of unity. The pilgrimage begins with the arrival in Mecca, where pilgrims gather around the Kaaba, their hearts overwhelmed by the sight of the sacred structure they have long faced in prayer. The first act of Hajj is Tawaf, the circumambulation of the Kaaba, where worshippers walk around it 7 times in a counterclockwise motion. This act represents the unity of believers and the eternal connection between humanity and the divine. The air vibrates with whispered prayers and the rhythmic steps of the faithful, each pilgrim absorbed in their own moment of spiritual reflection. One of the most deeply symbolic rituals of Hajj is the reenactment of Hajar's desperate search for water for her infant son, Ismail. Pilgrims walk 7 times between the hills of Safa and Marwa, retracing her struggle before the miraculous well of Zamzam was revealed. This act reminds believers of faith, perseverance, and God's mercy in times of hardship. The journey then takes them to the plains of Arafat, where they stand in prayer from noon until sunset, seeking forgiveness and guidance. This moment, known as the Day of Arafat, is considered the pinnacle of Hajj, a time when sins are erased and prayers are accepted. After Arafat, pilgrims gather pebbles to perform the symbolic stoning of the devil at Mina, commemorating Ibrahim's defiance of Satan's temptations. The pilgrimage concludes with another tawaf around the Kaaba, a final farewell before pilgrims return home, forever changed by the experience. For many, Hajj is the fulfillment of a lifelong dream, a journey that leaves an indelible mark on their soul. As they depart Mecca, their hearts remain tethered to the Kaaba, carrying with them the memory of the most sacred days of their lives. A journey that reaffirms faith and strengthens the eternal bond with God. In the modern era, the Kaaba stands at the center of a transformed Mecca, surrounded by towering skyscrapers and vast expansions of the sacred mosque. Despite the dramatic changes in its surroundings, the Kaaba remains untouched by time, its sanctity preserved as millions continue to turn toward it in prayer. Today, technological advancements and architectural developments have ensured that the holy site can accommodate the ever-growing number of pilgrims who come to perform Hajj and Umrah. The Grand Mosque, which once stood as a modest courtyard around the Kaaba, has expanded into a vast complex with multiple levels, climate-controlled areas and modern infrastructure designed to facilitate the movement of worshippers. One of the most significant traditions that continues in the modern era is the annual replacement of the Kiswa, the black silk cloth that drapes the Kaaba. This ceremonial event, carried out on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, the day of Arafat during Hajj, involves a team of skilled craftsmen carefully removing the old cloth and replacing it with a new one, embroidered with Quranic verses in gold. The kiswa, made from pure silk and gold threads, is a symbol of reverence, a reminder that while the structure of the Kaaba remains unchanged, the devotion surrounding it is renewed with every generation. Security and maintenance of the Kaaba have also evolved with time. The Saudi government has taken extensive measures to protect the sanctity of the site, implementing advanced surveillance systems, crowd control mechanisms, and emergency response protocols to ensure the safety of millions of pilgrims. Despite the rapid urbanization of Mecca, strict regulations prevent any direct alteration to the Kaaba itself, preserving its historical integrity. The role of technology in enhancing the pilgrimage experience is increasingly evident. Live broadcasts of prayers at the Kaaba reach Muslims worldwide, allowing those who cannot visit in person to witness the sacred rituals. Digital apps assist pilgrims in navigating the vast mosque, reciting prayers and understanding the significance of each step of their journey. Despite these advancements, the spiritual essence of the Kaaba remains unchanged. It continues to be the heart of Muslim worship, a place where past and present converge, uniting believers in an unbroken chain of devotion. Through centuries of change, one truth remains. The Kaaba is more than a physical structure. It is a timeless symbol of faith, guiding hearts toward the divine in an ever-evolving world. The Kaaba stands as more than just a structure of stone and cloth. It is a beacon of faith, an enduring testament to the devotion of millions. Through centuries of history, it has withstood the forces of nature, human conflict, and the passage of time, yet its significance has never wavered. It remains the heart of Islamic worship, the direction toward which every Muslim turns in prayer, and the sacred site that unites believers in one of the world's greatest pilgrimages. For those who have walked around it, touched its sacred walls, or simply gazed upon it from afar, the Kaaba represents more than a place. It is a connection to something greater, a reminder of the divine presence that transcends generations. Its history is woven with the stories of prophets, the faith of millions, and the promise of spiritual unity. No matter how much the world changes, the Kaaba remains unshaken, a timeless symbol of devotion and submission to God. As long as prayers continue to rise and hearts continue to seek, the Kaaba will endure, standing as it always has, a sacred sanctuary, a testament to faith, and a place where the spiritual and the eternal meet. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of the Kaaba. If you enjoyed this exploration of Islamic heritage and want to uncover more hidden stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Islamic Explorer. Stay with us as we continue to dive deeper into the rich history, faith, and wisdom of Islam. Until next time, may peace and knowledge always guide your path.